John Miller lived a quiet, unassuming life in the small town of Willow Creek. A widower for 3 years, he spent most of his days working as an auto mechanic at the local garage, fixing cars and chatting with customers who came in for oil changes or tire repairs. His hands were always stained with grease, but there was something comforting about the way he rolled up his sleeves and got to work. Despite the long hours and physical labor, John never complained because his real purpose wasn't found under the hood of a car. It was waiting for him at home. At home, John's world revolved around his 8-year-old son, Ethan. Losing his wife had been devastating, leaving a void that no amount of time could completely fill. But Ethan kept him going. The boy had inherited his mother's bright smile and curious nature, often peppering John with questions about how things worked, or why the sky turned orange during sunsets. On weekends, they would take walks together through the park, play, catch in the backyard, or sit side by side on the couch watching old movies. Life wasn't perfect, but it was good enough, until one chilly autumn evening when everything changed. That night, after finishing dinner, John decided to visit the Willow Creek Community Shelter. He'd been volunteering there sporadically since his wife passed away, finding solace in helping others even if it meant giving up precious free time. The shelter was bustling as usual, filled with people seeking warmth, food, or just a momentary escape from their struggles. John helped serve meals, stacking plates and refilling trays while exchanging small talk with some of the regulars. It was during cleanup that he noticed 2 children sitting quietly in the corner. They couldn't have been more than 7 or 8 years old, dressed in clothes that were far too big for their thin frames. One was a girl with matted hair and wide, cautious eyes. The other was her brother, whose scuffed sneakers barely covered his feet. They shared a plate of macaroni and cheese, eating slowly as though trying to stretch the meal as long as possible. Something about them tugged at John's heartstrings. He approached cautiously, not wanting to startle them. "Hi there," he said softly, crouching down so he was closer to their level. "I'm John. What are your names?" The girl hesitated before answering. "Lila," she whispered, barely audible over the hum of conversation in the room. Her brother nudged her gently, then spoke up. "And I'm Leo." John smiled warmly, though inside, he felt a pang of sadness. These kids looked like they hadn't known stability in a very long time. After talking to the shelter staff, he learned that Lila and Leo had been bouncing between foster homes ever since their parents abandoned them. No one seemed willing to take on 2 siblings together, and the constant upheaval had left its mark. They were withdrawn, wary of strangers, and clearly struggling to adapt to yet another unfamiliar environment. As John drove home that night, images of Lila and Leo lingered in his mind. He thought about Ethan, safe and loved in his own bed, and wondered what it must feel like to be unwanted, shuffled from place to place without anyone truly caring. By the time he pulled into the driveway, a decision had begun to form in his heart. It wasn't logical. He already had his hands full raising Ethan, and financially adding 2 more mouths to feed would be a challenge. But logic didn't seem to matter anymore. All that mattered was the idea that maybe, just maybe, he could give these kids the family they deserved. The next morning, John called the shelter and asked to meet with a social worker. Over coffee, he explained his situation. He was a single dad, yes, but he had a stable job, a roof over his head, and plenty of love to share. The process of adopting Lila and Leo wouldn't be easy, but John was determined. Paperwork piled up, interviews stretched on for hours, and background checks dragged out longer than expected. Yet through it all, John remained patient, knowing the reward would be worth the effort. Finally, the day came when Lila and Leo stepped into John's home for the first time. Ethan greeted them shyly, holding out a toy car as a peace offering. The twins exchanged nervous glances before accepting it, their faces lighting up ever so slightly. John showed them around the house, pointing out which bedroom would be theirs and explaining the rules. No running in the hallway. For the first few weeks, things were awkward. Lila clung to Leo whenever John entered the room, and Leo flinched at sudden movements, as though expecting punishment. Old habits die hard, John reminded himself. Trust wouldn't come overnight, but slowly, Cracks began to appear in the walls they'd built around themselves. Ethan proved to be the key. Where adults might have stumbled, his childlike innocence bridged the gap. He taught Lila how to ride a bike, cheering wildly when she finally managed to pedal without falling. He convinced Leo to join him in building Lego towers, laughing uproariously when one collapsed mid-construction. Watching them bond brought tears to John's eyes, not sad ones, but happy ones. For the first time in years, the house felt alive again, buzzing with laughter and chatter. Still, challenges loomed ahead. Money was tight, forcing John to pick up extra shifts at the garage. Grocery bills skyrocketed, and there were moments when doubt crept in. Could he really do this? Was he doing the right thing for everyone involved? But then he'd catch sight of Lila giggling at something Ethan said, or see Leo proudly showing off a drawing he'd made, and all doubts vanished. This was what family meant: messy, imperfect, and beautiful. Little did John know, however, that the hardest battles were still to come. While the twins were settling into their new home, they faced another hurdle outside its walls: school. And as much progress as they'd made within the safety of their family, the outside world wasn't always kind. The first day of school arrived, and John woke up early to make sure everyone was ready. He had spent the weekend preparing, buying backpacks, notebooks, and uniforms for Lila and Leo. Though they weren't brand new, the clothes were clean and neatly pressed. Ethan helped the twins choose their outfits, offering advice on which colors looked best. For a moment, it felt like any other family getting ready for the start of a new school year. But deep down, John couldn't shake the nervous knot in his stomach. He knew the twins would face challenges far beyond what most kids dealt with. When they pulled into the school parking lot, Lila and Leo hesitated before climbing out of the car. Their eyes darted around nervously, taking in the unfamiliar surroundings. Groups of children laughed and shouted as they reunited after summer break, while parents exchanged greetings nearby. To Lila and Leo, it all seemed overwhelming. They clung to each other instinctively, unsure of where to go or what to do next. John knelt beside them, placing a reassuring hand on each of their shoulders. "You're going to do great," he said firmly but gently. "Ethan will show you around, and I'll be here waiting for you when the bell rings. Just take it one step at a time, okay?" Lila nodded silently, while Leo forced a weak smile. Ethan stepped forward, giving them a thumbs up. "Don't worry, guys, you've got this," he declared, trying to sound braver than he felt. With that, the trio headed toward the building, leaving John standing by the car, watching until they disappeared inside. From the very beginning, things didn't go smoothly. In class, Lila and Leo sat together near the back, sticking close like magnets. Other students whispered and pointed, making comments about their mismatched uniforms and worn-out shoes. Some even snickered openly, calling them names like shelter kids, or worse. The teacher tried to intervene, reminding the class to treat everyone with kindness. But old habits are hard to break. By lunchtime, both twins looked miserable. Leo reacted differently than Lila. While she withdrew into herself, staring at her desk with tear-filled eyes, he lashed out angrily whenever someone teased him. During recess, a group of boys mocked his scuffed sneakers, saying he must have found them in a dumpster. Without thinking, Leo shoved one of them, yelling, "Leave me alone!" The playground monitor intervened, sending him to the principal's office. When John picked them up after school, Leo refused to talk about what happened, while Lila quietly admitted that she hated being there. At home, John did his best to comfort them. Over dinner, he reminded them that clothes didn't define who they were and that real friends wouldn't judge them based on appearances. Ethan chimed in, sharing stories about times he'd been teased for wearing hand-me-downs. "It gets better," he promised. "Just give it time." But despite their efforts, the twins struggled to believe him. Every day brought fresh insults and cruel jokes, chipping away at their confidence bit by bit. Things came to a head during art class one afternoon. The assignment was simple. Draw a picture of your family. Most students eagerly grabbed crayons and markers, filling their pages with colorful depictions of smiling parents, siblings, and pets. Lila stared blankly at her paper, unsure of what to draw. Her hands trembled as she picked up a pencil, sketching tentative lines. when another student leaned over and asked loudly, "Where's your mom and dad? Did they run away?" Lila burst into tears and ran out of the room. John received a call from the school later that day. He arrived to find Lila sitting in the nurse's office, hugging her knees to her chest. She refused to speak even to him until they were safely back in the car. On the drive home, she finally broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. "I don't want to go back," she cried. "They hate us." John's heart ached hearing those words. That night he sat with both Lila and Leo, holding their hands tightly. "Listen to me," he said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "You are amazing, smart, and kind. None of this is your fault. People say mean things because they don't understand you, or because they're afraid of how special you really are. Don't let them win. Show them who you are." Though his words offered some comfort, the bullying continued. Teachers noticed the toll it was taking on the twins' academic performance. Lila rarely participated in class discussions, keeping her gaze fixed on the floor. Leo acted out more frequently, disrupting lessons and earning detention slips almost weekly. One teacher suggested that perhaps they needed extra tutoring since they came from such a difficult background. John shook his head firmly. "They're not behind," he insisted. "They just need time to adjust." What no one realized, not even John, was that beneath the surface, something extraordinary was brewing. Lila and Leo might have been struggling, socially, but their minds worked in ways few could imagine. They spent hours poring over books borrowed from the library, devouring information about science, math, and history. At night, when the house grew quiet, they whispered to each other about planets, machines, and puzzles they wanted to solve someday. These late-night conversations became their sanctuary, a place where the cruelty of the outside world couldn't reach them. Then, one fateful morning, everything changed. It started with a seemingly ordinary math lesson. The teacher wrote a complex problem on the board, challenging the class to solve it. No one raised their hand, not even the top students. Just as the teacher prepared to move on, a small voice piped up from the back of the room. "I think I know the answer," Lila said softly, her cheeks flushing red. The entire class turned to look at her, some rolling their eyes or smirking. But Lila stood her ground, walking to the front and explaining her solution step by step. Her method was unconventional yet brilliant, earning gasps of disbelief from her classmates. Even the teacher was stunned, praising her for her creativity and insight. For the first time, Lila felt a flicker of pride instead of shame. Later that week, during science class, Leo stunned everyone again. The topic was energy conservation, and the teacher posed a question about how wind turbines worked. Without hesitation, Leo launched into an explanation so detailed and accurate that it left jaws dropping. He spoke confidently, drawing diagrams on the board and answering follow-up questions without missing a beat. By the end of the lesson, even the bullies grudgingly admitted he was smart, even if they still didn't like him. Word spread quickly among teachers and students alike. Suddenly, Lila and Leo weren't just the poor twins anymore. They were the geniuses, the ones who could solve problems no one else dared attempt. While some classmates remained hostile, others began to show curiosity and even respect. Slowly but surely, the twins started finding their footing in a world that had once rejected them. For John, seeing this transformation was bittersweet. He wished they hadn't had to endure so much pain to get here, but he couldn't deny the strength they'd shown along the way. As he tucked them into bed one night, he kissed their foreheads and whispered, "I'm so proud of you both." And for the first time in weeks, they smiled, not shyly but with genuine joy. The transformation began subtly, almost unnoticed at first. After Lila's unexpected triumph in math class and Leo's dazzling performance in science, whispers started rippling through the hallways of Willow Creek Elementary. At first, they weren't kind whispers. Some kids muttered sarcastically about nerds or rolled their eyes whenever the twins raised their hands to answer questions. But as days turned into weeks, something remarkable happened. Lila and Leo kept proving themselves over and over again, leaving even their harshest critics stunned. It all started with small moments that grew bigger. During a spelling bee competition, Lila calmly spelled words most adults would struggle with, earning murmurs of admiration from teachers and students alike. When the school announced a geography quiz bowl, Leo volunteered without hesitation. Armed with an encyclopedic knowledge of countries, capitals, and obscure facts about the world, he single-handedly carried his team to victory. By the time the final buzzer rang, even the opposing team gave him a begrudging round of applause. But it wasn't just academics where the twins shone. One afternoon during art class, the teacher assigned a project to design a model city using recycled materials. Most students created simple structures, a cardboard house here, a paper tube skyscraper there. Not Leo and Lila. Working together, they crafted an intricate miniature metropolis complete with solar panels, wind turbines, and a working water filtration system made out of plastic bottles and straws. Their creation drew gasps from classmates and earned them first prize in the school's annual innovation fair. Teachers couldn't help but take notice. Mrs. Patterson, the math teacher who had initially dismissed the twins as struggling learners, pulled John aside one day after school. "I don't know how to explain this," she admitted, shaking her head in disbelief. "But your kids, they're extraordinary. I've never seen anything like it." John smiled proudly, though inside, he felt a mix of emotions. He was thrilled to see Lila and Leo thriving, but he also worried about the pressure mounting on their young shoulders. Fame, even within the confines of a small elementary school, came with its own challenges. The more attention the twins received, the more some classmates seemed determined to tear them down. Despite their newfound recognition, bullying didn't disappear overnight. If anything, it intensified in new and insidious ways. Kids who once mocked the twins for being poor now taunted them for being too smart. Notes appeared on their desks with phrases like teacher's pet or know-it-alls. During recess, groups of students deliberately excluded them from games, muttering under their breath that no one wanted to play with nerds. Leo bore the brunt of it, his fiery temper often flaring when insults hit too close to home. One particularly bad afternoon, a group of older boys cornered him near the basketball court, sneering about how he thought he was better than everyone else. Before long, fists flew, and Leo ended up in the principal's office yet again. This time, however, John arrived to find not just anger, but tears streaming down his son's face. "They'll never stop," Leo choked out between sobs. "No matter what we do, they'll always hate us." John knelt beside him, gripping his shoulders firmly. "Listen to me," he said, his voice steady despite the ache in his chest. "People are afraid of what they don't understand. You and Lila are different. You see the world in ways others can't. That's not something to be ashamed of, it's something to celebrate. Don't let anyone make you feel small because they're scared of how big you really are." Back at Taos, home. Lila listened quietly as John comforted Leo. She rarely spoke about the bullying she endured, preferring to retreat into books or puzzles rather than confront her tormentors. But that night, as the family gathered around the dinner table, she surprised everyone by speaking up. "What if we showed them?" she asked softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Not just answers in class, but something bigger. Something they can't ignore." Her words sparked an idea that quickly took shape. Over the next few weeks, Lila and Leo poured their energy into a project unlike anything the school had ever seen. Using scraps from John's garage and spare parts donated by neighbors, they built a fully functional robot capable of sorting recyclables. It wasn't perfect. The machine occasionally jammed or misidentified items, but it worked well enough to impress even the toughest critics. When the twins unveiled their invention at the school's annual STEM showcase, jaws dropped. Parents, teachers, and students crowded around, watching in awe as the robot sorted cans, bottles, and paper with surprising accuracy. Reporters from the local newspaper showed up to cover the event, snapping photos and interviewing the twins about their inspiration. For the first time, Lila and Leo stood confidently in front of a crowd, answering questions with poise and enthusiasm. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Classmates who had once ridiculed them now clamored for autographs, or at least High fives. Even the bullies grudgingly admitted that the twins were kind of cool. Teachers praised their ingenuity, while administrators hinted at potential scholarships and opportunities beyond Willow Creek. Suddenly, Lila and Leo weren't outsiders anymore. They were celebrities. Yet beneath the accolades lay a deeper truth. None of this would have been possible without resilience. The twins hadn't let cruelty define them. Instead, they used it as fuel to push harder, dream bigger, and prove their worth. And while the journey had been far from easy, it taught them, and everyone around them, an invaluable lesson. Intelligence isn't something to fear, it's something to embrace. As the showcase wound down and the crowd dispersed, John watched his children interact with peers who only weeks earlier had treated them poorly. There was still tension, yes, but also glimmers of acceptance. Ethan stood nearby, beaming with pride as he introduced his siblings to friends who now regarded them with genuine curiosity. For John, it was a moment of quiet triumph, not because his kids had silenced their critics, but because they had risen above them. Driving home that evening, John glanced in the rearview mirror at Lila and Leo, both fast asleep in their seats. Their faces were peaceful, free of the worry and doubt that had shadowed them for so long. In that moment, he realized something profound. The twins weren't just survivors, they were trailblazers. They had transformed adversity into opportunity, turning pain into purpose. And though challenges undoubtedly lay ahead, John knew they were ready to face whatever came next. The aftermath of the STEM showcase brought a wave of attention that neither Lila nor Leo had anticipated. For weeks, they were the talk of Willow Creek Elementary. Students who once mocked them now flocked to their side, eager to bask in their reflected glory. Teachers praised them endlessly, and even strangers in town recognized them as those genius twins. But while the newfound admiration was flattering, it didn't erase the scars left by months of bullying. Beneath their smiles, both Lila and Leo carried the weight of those painful memories, and so did Ethan. Ethan had always been fiercely protective of his siblings. From the moment Lila and Leo joined their family, he'd taken it upon himself to shield them from harm. He taught them how to ride bikes, helped them with homework, and stood up for them when bullies got too bold. Yet, as much as he loved being their big brother, he hated seeing them hurt. The bullying had cut deep, not just for the twins, but for him too. Every insult directed at Lila and Leo felt like an attack on his own heart. And now, despite their success, Ethan could see the lingering fear in their eyes whenever they walked into school. One evening, after dinner, Ethan approached, John with a determined look on his face. "Dad," he began, "we need to do something about the bullying. It's not fair what they've been through, and I don't want anyone else to feel that way." John nodded thoughtfully. "What do you have in mind?" Ethan hesitated for a moment, gathering his thoughts. "I think we should talk to the principal. Maybe there's a way to make things better, for everyone, not just Lila and Leo." The idea struck a chord with John. Over the next few days, he arranged a meeting with Principal Harris, bringing Ethan along to share his perspective. Together, they outlined a plan to address bullying head-on. The school already had anti-bullying policies in place, but enforcement had been inconsistent. With input from Ethan and other students, they proposed new initiatives aimed at fostering kindness and inclusion. The first step was a series of assemblies where students could openly discuss the impact of bullying. Teachers encouraged honest conversations, creating a safe space for kids to share their experiences. To Ethan's surprise, several classmates admitted to feeling powerless against peer pressure or guilty for standing by while others were mistreated. These confessions sparked empathy, breaking down barriers between students who had previously dismissed one another. Next came workshops focused on teamwork and collaboration. Groups of students were paired together, sometimes deliberately mixing unlikely combinations, to work on projects requiring cooperation. At first, tensions ran high, especially among former bullies forced to partner with their targets. But over time, shared goals created common ground. One memorable project involved designing a community garden with teams competing to create the most innovative layout. By the end of the challenge, even the harshest critics found themselves respecting the creativity and effort of their peers. Lila and Leo played key roles in these efforts, though not in the way many expected. Rather than using their newfound fame to dominate discussions, they led by example. During group activities, they welcomed quieter classmates, encouraging them to contribute ideas without fear of judgment. When conflicts arose, they mediated calmly, reminding everyone that mistakes were opportunities to learn. Their quiet leadership inspired others to follow suit, gradually shifting the school's culture. Meanwhile, Ethan worked tirelessly behind the scenes to rally support for his siblings. He befriended kids who had once teased Lila and Leo, inviting them to hang out after school or join weekend soccer games. Slowly but surely, friendships formed where animosity had once thrived. Even the ringleader of the bullies, a boy named Ryan, began softening his stance. After losing a bet and reluctantly agreeing to spend a day helping Ethan tutor younger students, Ryan discovered a knack for explaining concepts in ways that clicked. By the end of the session, he was laughing alongside Leo, comparing notes on robotics. As the weeks passed, the changes became undeniable. Hallways that had once buzzed with cruel whispers now echoed with laughter and encouragement. Lunch tables that had divided students by cliques transformed into melting pots of diverse personalities. Teachers noticed the shift too, reporting fewer incidents of conflict and more instances of genuine camaraderie. For Lila and Leo, the transformation was profound. They no longer flinched at every sharp glance or biting remark. Instead, they walked through the halls with their heads held high, knowing they had allies all around them. Even the teasing, which hadn't vanished entirely, felt less menacing, often tinged with playful affection rather than malice. When someone called Leo a nerd during science class, another student quickly chimed in, "Yeah, but he's our nerd." Still, the road wasn't entirely smooth. Old habits die hard, and some resentment lingered beneath the surface. A few students continued to grumble about the twins getting special treatment, though such complaints grew quieter as time went on. What truly silenced the doubters was the twins' humility. Despite their achievements, Lila and Leo remained grounded, crediting their success to teamwork and perseverance rather than individual brilliance. Their attitude earned them respect far beyond the classroom. Parents began approaching John at community events, thanking him for raising such remarkable children. Neighbors who had initially questioned his decision to adopt the twins now offered praise and support, volunteering to help with everything, from grocery shopping to home repairs. The Millers weren't just a family anymore, they were a symbol of hope, proving that love and determination could overcome even the toughest odds. By the end of the school year, the twins had cemented their place not just in their peers' hearts but in the fabric of the entire community. Their robot invention won first prize at a regional competition, earning them scholarships to attend a prestigious STEM academy. News of their victory spread throughout Willow Creek, sparking celebrations that brought the town together. At the award ceremony, Principal Harris took the stage to honor the twins, calling them a testament to the power of resilience, intelligence, and unity. As the crowd erupted in applause, John stood proudly beside his children, tears glistening in his eyes. He glanced at Ethan, whose grin stretched ear to ear, and felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. This journey hadn't been easy, for any of them, but it had forged bonds stronger than anything material wealth could buy. In giving Lila and Leo a home, John had gained not just two extraordinary kids, but also a renewed sense of purpose. That night, as the family gathered around the kitchen table to celebrate, Lila spoke up softly. "Thank you," she said, looking at each of them in turn, "for believing in us, for sticking together. We couldn't have done it without you." Leo nodded, adding, "And thank you for showing us that being smart isn't enough. You taught us to be kind too." John smiled, reaching across the table to squeeze their hands. "Kindness and brains," he said with a chuckle. "That's a pretty unbeatable combination." As they laughed and shared stories late into the night, the Millers knew their story was far from over. Challenges would undoubtedly arise again, but they faced the future with unwavering confidence. Together they had proven that no obstacle was insurmountable, not when love and courage lit the way. The final weeks of the school year flew by in a blur of excitement and anticipation. Lila and Leo's achievements had become the stuff of legend at Willow Creek Elementary, inspiring not just their classmates but the entire town. Their robot invention, which had earned them regional acclaim, was displayed proudly in the school's trophy case, a testament to what determination and teamwork could achieve. But for the twins, the real victory wasn't the awards or accolades. It was the sense of belonging they'd finally found after months of struggle. Graduation day arrived under a clear blue sky, with parents, teachers, and students gathering on the school field for the ceremony. Rows of folding chairs stretched across the grass, adorned with colorful balloons and banners celebrating the end of another chapter. As John, Ethan, and the twins made their way to their seats, they were greeted with smiles and waves from neighbors who had come to cheer them on. For John, it was a moment of overwhelming pride, not just for Lila and Leo, but for how far the entire family had come together. Principal Harris took the stage, her voice ringing out over the crowd as she delivered her opening remarks. "This year has been one of growth, resilience, and unity," she began, "and no one embodies those values more than our very own Lila and Leo Miller." She paused, letting the applause wash over the field before continuing. "They remind us that intelligence is only part of the equation. True greatness comes from kindness, perseverance, and the courage to stand up for what's right." When it was time for the students to receive their certificates, Lila and Leo walked to the stage hand in hand, their faces glowing with quiet confidence. As Principal Harris called their names, the audience erupted into cheers, louder and longer than for any other student. Parents clapped enthusiastically, while classmates shouted words of encouragement. Even Ryan, the former bully, stood up and whistled, earning a grin from Leo as he accepted his certificate. After the ceremony, the Millers posed for photos alongside friends and well-wishers. Teachers praised John for his dedication, marveling at how seamlessly the twins had integrated into the family. "You've done something truly special here," Mrs. Patterson said, shaking his hand warmly. "Not every parent would take on such a challenge, but look at the difference you've made." John simply smiled, deflecting the praise. "It wasn't just me," he replied. "We all did this together." Later that evening, the family celebrated with a backyard barbecue. Neighbors brought dishes to share, filling the air with the scent of grilled burgers and fresh-baked pies. Children ran around playing tag while adults laughed and reminisced about the school year. At the center of it all were Lila and Leo, surrounded by friends who had once treated them so cruelly. Now, those same kids eagerly sought their advice, on everything from math problems to science projects. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the yard, John gathered everyone for a brief speech. Standing beside the picnic table, he held up a glass of lemonade and cleared his throat. The chatter died down as all eyes turned to him. "I want to thank each of you for being part of this incredible journey," he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "When I decided to adopt Lila and Leo, I knew it wouldn't be easy. We faced challenges none of us could have predicted, but we also discovered strength we didn't know we had. These two amazing kids taught me, and all of us, that love has the power to heal wounds and build bridges." He glanced at Ethan, who nodded encouragingly, then turned to Lila and Leo. "You've shown us what it means to rise above adversity, to use your talents not just for yourselves but to make the world a better place. And you've reminded us that family isn't defined by blood. It's defined by the connections we choose to nurture." Tears welled up in Lila's eyes as she hugged John tightly, while Leo grinned broadly, clearly proud of everything they'd accomplished. The crowd erupted into applause, sealing the moment with warmth and gratitude. In the weeks that followed, life settled into a new rhythm. Preparations for the STEM Academy kept Lila and Leo busy as they attended orientation sessions and met fellow scholarship recipients. Though nervous about leaving behind the familiar comforts of Willow Creek, they were excited to explore opportunities beyond its borders. Ethan promised to visit whenever he could, vowing to stay close despite the distance. For John, watching his children spread their wings was both joyful and bittersweet. He had always known that parenthood meant letting go little by little, but it didn't make the process any easier. Still, he took comfort in knowing that the foundation they'd built together would guide them through whatever lay ahead. One crisp autumn morning, as the twins packed their bags for the academy, John pulled them aside for a private moment. "Remember why you started this journey," he told them gently. "No matter where life takes you, never forget the importance of kindness, humility, and standing up for what's right. Those are the qualities that truly define you, not your grades or trophies." Lila and Leo nodded solemnly, promising to carry those lessons with them always. As they boarded the bus bound for the academy, waving goodbye to John and Ethan, their hearts swelled with gratitude for the man who had given them a second chance at life, for the brother who had stood by them unconditionally, and for the community that had embraced them when they needed it most. Years later, when people in Willow Creek spoke of the Millers, they remembered not just the genius twins or the single father who adopted them, but the story of a family that proved love conquers all. Through laughter, tears, and countless challenges, they had transformed pain into purpose and hardship into hope. And though their paths diverged as time went on, the bond they shared remained unbreakable, a beacon of light in an often uncertain world. As Lila and Leo thrived at the academy, blazing trails in fields ranging from robotics to renewable energy, they carried with them the lessons of their childhood. They became role models not just for their intellect but for their compassion, proving that brilliance shines brightest when paired with empathy. And every step of the way, they credited their success not to their own abilities but to the unwavering support of a family who believed in them when no one else did. For John, there was no greater reward than seeing his children flourish, not because they achieved fame or fortune, but because they stayed true to themselves. In giving Lila and Leo a home, he had gained far more than he ever imagined, a legacy of love, resilience, and hope that would endure for generations to come.